And then the final piece of bombshell testimony came when she revealed that she received $20 million to settle that civil suit that started this whole thing in November of 2023, Andy. So,
Well, if you thought the $20 million hush money was the shocking part, buckle up, because what Cassie just laid out in court makes that settlement look like pocket change. From brutal assaults to what she disturbingly called freak-offs, this isn't just salacious gossip, it's a full-blown implosion of the bad boy empire. And here's the kicker, one key witness under federal protection might blow this thing wide open. But we'll get to that. This is Chatter Fuse, where we don't just sip the tea, we bring the whole pot. Subscribe for more celebrity scandals they pray you forget. Surveillance footage shocks the jury, but Cassie made it clear. The violence wasn't just physical, it was strategic. She told the court that after every blow, every breakdown, there was a calculated follow-up. Silence, isolation, and control. Witnesses heard the yelling. Hotel staff saw the aftermath. But behind closed doors, the real weapon wasn't his fists. It was the system he built to keep her quiet. According to her testimony, every time she tried to reclaim her independence, he'd yank it away. A premiere? Canceled with a punch. A moment alone? Answered with locked doors and confiscated phones. The goal wasn't just to hurt her. It was to erase any chance she had at leaving. And the more she resisted, the more invasive it got. Security teams followed her like shadows. Staff were instructed not to speak, not to help. Everything in her orbit bent to his word. Because for Diddy, it wasn't about losing Cassie. It was about making sure she believed she had nowhere else to go.
and then there were also many beatings, frequent beatings. They showed in court today the graphic photos of the beatings, the injuries that she sustained from those beatings.
And that moment came one night in 2009. Just a casual conversation at a party with a music producer. Nothing scandalous, nothing secret. Just Cassie, talking about her future. But to Diddy, that was a betrayal. She told the court that his mood flipped instantly. Words turned into slurs. Rage turned into violence. And by the time they got into the car, she knew what was coming. She hit him first. Pure instinct, pure fear. What followed, though, was savage. Cassie says he stomped on her face while she curled up on the car floor, drunk, humiliated, and surrounded by his staff, none of whom lifted a finger to stop it. When she tried to run, they didn't help her escape. They brought her back to silence, back to obedience. And it was only then that she realized it didn't matter if she was his artist, his partner, or his victim. To him, she was property. That hotel room became the blueprint for what Cassie described as a routine punishment cycle. Locked doors, no contact, and total surveillance. She wasn't just hiding injuries. She was being erased. According to her testimony, Diddy's team confiscated her phones, her laptop, anything that could connect her to the outside world. She was watched around the clock, with orders to keep her isolated until the bruises faded, and the obedience returned. But the bruises weren't the worst part. Cassie said what haunted her more was the mental fog that came with the silence. Days blurred together, no clocks, no freedom, just the sound of her own thoughts. And the threat that if she stepped out of line again, there would be consequences. And the scariest thing, this wasn't just a punishment, it was a pattern designed to make sure she never tried to run again. That fear followed her long after the relationship ended. Cassie told the court that in August 2018, after what she thought was a final dinner to close that chapter of her life, Diddy drove her home, then forced his way inside. She hadn't invited him in. She didn't want him there, but that didn't stop him. She testified that once inside, he assaulted her on the living room floor. She screamed. She said no, over and over. But according to her account, he was unrecognizable. Eyes cold, expression vacant, like he wasn't even there. This wasn't a heated argument or a misunderstanding. It was about power, about punishing her for moving on, for starting a new relationship, for proving she could live without him. And after it was over, he got up, just walked out, like nothing happened. But for Cassie, everything had changed. Again. And despite everything, Cassie admitted she saw him again. The courtroom fell silent as she described a later encounter, this time consensual. To the outside world, it made no sense. But for her, it was a trauma loop she hadn't escaped yet. 10 years of manipulation doesn't vanish overnight. And when the person who hurt you is also the person who trained you to need their approval, logic has nothing to do with it. She said she still cared for him. That part of her believed she owed him something. That's what abuse does. It rewires your instincts until survival looks like loyalty. And while she tried to move forward with a new relationship, a new life, she couldn't shake the shame, not just from the violence, but from what she had been forced to endure behind closed doors, and what those freak-offs had done to her body. Cassie wasn't the only one living in fear. Those closest to her became targets, too. She testified about a night at her Wilshire Boulevard apartment, where she woke up to find Diddy holding one of her friends, Brianna, over the edge of her 17th floor balcony. No warning, no reason, just rage. She said he pulled her back up only to throw her across the patio furniture like she was nothing. That friend later sued Diddy for $10 million, alleging sexual abuse. And while the court hasn't confirmed the outcome of that lawsuit, Cassie made it clear this wasn't a one-off moment. It was part of a wider pattern, where violence was used to isolate her by attacking anyone who dared stay close. Because the message was simple: if Cassie couldn't be reached, then the people around her could. And it wasn't just friends who bore the brunt of his violence. Cassie testified that Diddy turned on his own employees too. She recalled moments when assistants and staff were physically assaulted for what seemed like minor infractions. One incident stood out. Diddy allegedly punched a staff member in the head without warning in front of others. No reason, no reaction, just raw dominance on display. Then there was Mia, the former assistant Cassie described being dragged out of bed and onto a balcony after refusing to hand over her phone. That wasn't just intimidation. That was control in its purest, ugliest form. And now Mia is expected to testify, under federal protection, behind privacy screens. Her story isn't just another account of abuse. It's potentially a thread that ties the entire operation together, and one that federal investigators believe could unravel the bad boy empire from the inside. And even after she finally broke free, new life, new marriage, new family, the reach of his control didn't let go. Cassie told the court that long after their breakup, Diddy kept sending messages, not just emotionally manipulative texts, but threats disguised as casual reminders. One message demanded she repay him for personal training sessions, because the trainer she later married had once been on his payroll. He framed it like a debt. She saw it for what it was: one more attempt to keep himself tethered to her life. And while the rest of the world saw Cassie smiling in wedding photos or raising her children, she says she was still unraveling from years of manipulation. The fear hadn't vanished. It had just changed shape, turning into panic attacks, insomnia, flashbacks, and silence she no longer knew how to break. Because for victims of long-term abuse, freedom isn't just about leaving. It's about surviving after you do. Eventually, the silence broke. Not in a headline, not in a song, but in a lawsuit. Cassie testified that during trauma therapy, her counselor encouraged her to write everything down. What started as journaling soon turned into full chapters, a record of everything she'd endured. She sent those pages to Diddy through his assistant, hoping for acknowledgement. Instead, she was told flatly, "No one's reading that." That was the final push. In November 2023, she filed a civil suit demanding $30 million in damages. The case didn't drag on. Within 24 hours, Diddy settled for $20 million, no trial, no admission, just a check and a non-disclosure agreement. But here's the twist: NDAs don't cover crimes. And when federal investigators stepped in, the door Cassie thought had been permanently closed swung wide open. And this time, it wasn't just about justice for her. It was about exposing the machine behind him.